So it's been a while since I made any videos. The one that went up on the main channel a couple of days ago, I'm guessing I started in July at some point. According to my Google Docs, I wrote that back in July, the first week of July, and it literally took this long to get out. Thanks to some efforts from people who probably shouldn't, or who I should probably be giving more credit or something. But really what I wanted to talk about today was something that people have been talking about for a while, and I thought don't really understand the core of the problem, or just my 2 cents on the problem. And really that problem is Patreon. Now, if you watch as many small YouTubers as I do, you know that Patreon is starting to become the de facto method of funding for nearly every YouTube channel. And if you know me, you know that I have a Patreon too. But that's for different reasons. I don't really expect people to give me money. I just kind of use it as a way to put all my shit in one place. There's probably other ways to do that, like getting a website, but this is free, so I just do this. But literally people as small as me who have 0 subscribers have Patreons for no particular reason, and they're not really making any money off of it. But that's not really the point. The point is, the only reason anybody's doing this at all is to supplement their YouTube income. Channels as big as 400,000, 500,000 subscribers still don't make enough ad money to fund themselves without having to resort to Patreon. Is that a problem? Yes it is, because people say this all the time, but there used to be a time when you could just start a website and fund it by getting money from the ads. And maybe the CPMs were much higher back in the day, or maybe people believed that web ads are more effective than they actually are, or maybe the culture of the internet started off as a free model so that anything involving money or paying for something became stigmatized in a way that we haven't been able to reverse effectively. It could be any one of those, but we're now at this conundrum where if you want to do things on the internet, the production value of things has gone up so high that you can't just half-ass it. You can't just do what I'm doing now and sit on your couch and record a video with the camera pointed at your face. That's not really going to get views. That's not what you need to do to succeed on this platform, right? You need to make high production content that has a lot of effort put into it, and by definition, that kind of content isn't very easy to make. It requires a lot of investment, both in time and money, to be able to make on a fast enough basis to keep viewers engaged, right? So when you have this problem, which is the escalating production value arms race on YouTube, and then you have another problem, which is de-escalating CPMs and ad revenue, what do? What are the options that are open to you, right? Well, the first is you have to find outside sponsors, outside ad agencies, or outside companies that are willing to pay to put their ads on your video. Now, that's been going on for years now, and it's kind of solved the problem, but recently YouTube's been cracking down on that, and the FCC has been cracking down on that as well, telling you there's like a standard of guidelines that you have to follow when you include a paid promotion in your video. And the only channel that I've really seen do all the steps is like Linus Tech Tips and Internet Today. And one is much smaller than the other, but they're really the only ones that actually treat paid promotions the way they're supposed to. And eventually the FCC is going to get really strict with this. Now, I think they've been pretty lenient so far because the rules were only made last year. So they probably think that, oh, hey, it hasn't been enough time to enforce that people do this the right way. But I don't think that by itself solves the problem. Because as a consumer of these videos who doesn't really have any investment in the companies, but rather the people selling them to me, I don't like seeing those ads. I don't like how they change the content. Usually they're either before the video or during the video or after or all three. And I don't like having a break in a video so that people can shill me some socks or a box of shit. And partially this problem is due to the sponsors that are advertising on YouTube not being the mainstream brands that we recognize, right? Like fucking Loot Crate is about as mainstream as you're gonna get. Squarespace maybe is the most mainstream advertiser on YouTube, and they're not really mainstream. I think they had a Super Bowl ad this year, but it's a web hosting site. Like, it's not Coca-Cola, it's not Tide, it's not Colgate, It's not any of these big brands that you know, and maybe they probably don't even need the internet to sell their ads. But there's gonna be a point, a threshold, somewhere in the future where TV is gonna become so unpopular that all ads will be internet based to some extent, or at least. When you see a YouTube ad now, they're not made for YouTube usually. Like I'm talking about the pre-roll ads that you see, the skippable ones, like up here in Canada we get them for A&W and stuff like that. They aren't made for YouTube usually. This is changing now, but usually they're made for TV and then adapted for YouTube. Most of the car ads work like this. For some reason I've been getting a lot of car ads lately. They're made for TV and adapted to YouTube, and I think there'll come a point in the future where it's the opposite, where they'll be made for YouTube and then adapted to TV, and there'll probably be some kind of like call to action to go to the web or to follow an Instagram account or something like that, because there's probably going to be higher engagement following that method than the traditional just, oh, go and buy this at your local superstore, right? Because Amazon is selling the vast majority of the products that are being advertised, so it really doesn't make sense to not have an online presence anymore just because a majority of your sales or a majority of your products are being sold online. But I think I've gone off on a little bit of a tangent here. Let's bring it back to the problem, which is making money on the internet, which is much harder now than ever. I don't want to say that, but I think it's just hard, period. Let's talk about journalism for a bit, right? Clark Kent. Clark Kent is just a normal reporter at the Daily Planet in the fiction, in the comics, and he's shown as making a decent living with his low-level reporter job and just getting by. And that's fine. He writes articles or whatever he does. But now, journalism has become somewhat of a premium that we have to pay for, right? It's like, if you want real journalism, you have to subscribe to the New York Times or the Washington Post or the Wall Street Journal, and all their articles you only get like 5 a month. And you have to pay to get more than that. And this is not a bad thing per se. This is the funding model they've chosen or they think will best suit their goals. But at the end of the day, they still have to fund all the journalists that they're paying. And there's only one way to get quality journalism, and that's with reporters. You can't get quality journalism any other way because you need somebody to go and find out the things that you need to report about. And a lot of the most important information in the history of the Western world has been found by reporters, right? Reporters, whistleblowers working in conjunction with reporters have given us some of the biggest unexpected stories of our lifetimes and lifetimes before us. So if we can't find a way to fund journalism, it's going to be a huge problem. And these websites have chosen a pay model, and that's fine for them because they offer such a large value proposition that at some point, if you read enough New York Times articles, you feel bad not being subscribed to their paid option, right? Because you can find a way around their, site blocker. There are ways to do it, but the question is, like Netflix, there are ways to get all the shows on Netflix. The question is that something you want to waste your time doing, or would you rather be doing something else? So the value proposition of the New York Times and the Washington Post, when they charge a premium for their journalism, their quality content, is, look at all these articles we have, look at all this groundbreaking reporting that we're doing. Don't you think you should be supporting this? That's their proposition to you to get your money, right? And in a way, YouTubers are basically the same, except they have the personal component added to it. That's why it's a more alluring proposition for YouTubers, and maybe why people talk more about Patreon than subscribing to the New York Times is, when you know someone from when they were a very small channel and they've grown up big now, you feel that you're kind of involved in their story. So when they say support my Patreon, they're actually asking you to support their story, or like how much do you believe, how much do you think this story says something about you? How much do you think monetarily you can contribute and show in a way that you're involved in this as well? And that's why there's so many, Patreon tells you this when you sign up with them, is one of the ways that to thank your supporters should be to include their names in the end credits or whatever, or include their names in the video so they feel like they're involved, right? And the way Patreon asks you to treat the people that pay you, it gets a little slimy for my taste. I get all these emails every day. But at the core of Patreon, you still don't solve the problem, much the way the New York Times isn't solving the problem. Is when it's required that people have to make a conscious decision to support you, it becomes a harder thing to do, and not even just because people are lazy, just because people forget or don't even think that this is a possibility. When you're watching a TV show, the ads just show up. And when they show up, you just watch them because there's no other option. Until recently, there weren't DVRs or anything like that. And you can, without doing anything on your part, just support the shows that you want to watch. And people tally the viewership of certain shows, and just by watching, you can contribute monetarily to the show, right? And this is something that we kind of were promised when YouTube became big. It's like, oh hey, you'll just get ad revenue just like a TV show and it'll be fine. But by and large, it hasn't been that way at all. There's been no way to passively support the creators that you want to support. You know, you have to contribute to their Patreon, or like buy them a coffee on Coffee or whatever, like send them money on PayPal, right? And in a way, this isn't sustainable, I don't think, because I was looking at some of the numbers and they don't add up at all. Like a YouTuber that has like 300,000 subscribers is not even in the top 10,000 channels subscriber-wise. And I don't want to talk about view ranks, that's a whole nother video, but when they're not in the top 10,000 channels, like how many channels do you think should be able to make a full-time living on YouTube? That's my question. A full-time living meaning being able to pay their rent and all their expenses using just money off of YouTube. Now that could be from the new like membership option or from like ad money or whatever, but the point is how much of their money should be coming from YouTube at all, right? Should there be 10,000 career YouTubers? Is that the number? Is that the limit that we're going to set? Because there is some math related to Patreon, and I don't think the carrying capacity is there. Like Patreon likes to point out that they handed out over $150 million or whatever, but the problem is it is a centralized platform, and like all centralized platforms, it has restrictions, it has things you can't do on it, and they've increasingly become more and more strict with these things. So it's not really a free place, like a free expression type of place anymore. Now that's just a consequence of them becoming big and being subject to the same kind of code of conduct policies that all credit card taking businesses on the internet do. And Patreon doesn't offer you like a sweetheart deal on getting payments through credit cards or anything like that. Shopify has the same fees as Patreon does. And I would say has more flexibility and allows you to do more things than Patreon does. Like you could sell shit on your store in Shopify, you just have to pay for hosting, but you get a web store, which you have to pay for anyway. Like, I don't know. Patreon is such a centralized platform, and as they grow, they're taking the same cut as any other platform on the internet that takes credit cards, and all you're getting in return is the convenience of not having to send a PayPal email address to everyone who wants to support you. I don't think that's sustainable going forward. And I think the money's going to start to pool and go more and more to bigger creators and less to smaller creators who really need it. Like Sam Harris doesn't need the whatever amount of money he's getting on Patreon. He really doesn't need that. He's found ways to monetize his audience that don't involve Patreon at all. This is just a nice bonus for him. And but the problem is, because of high profile creators like Sam Harris or Studio Trigger of all people being on Patreon, they're taking money away from the small creators. And I'm not saying it's a zero-sum game, but there is some limit to how much the users of a particular platform are willing to pay, right? It's not an endless treasure trove of money. That's not how it works. As of August 2018, there are 2 million active users, active patrons on Patreon, and 100,000 creators, right? And in its entirety, Patreon has given out more than $300 million. Now, they take a 3% cut of that, so they get $9 million of that goes straight to them. That's not really my problem, though. They have to make their platform work, but the problem is it's becoming bloated, right? They're not focusing on the things that made them successful in the first place, which is grassroots fundraising. That's what Patreon is supposed to be about. Patreon is supposed to be about getting money to people who would otherwise not be able to secure it, right? But now the platform is not about that at all. Think about those numbers that I said again. 2 million active monthly patrons and 100,000 creators. Now, let's say not everyone. Let's say 10,000 people on on Patreon should be able to make a living out of their channels, right? So that's 10% of that already. The other 90% just won't make enough. That's just a fact of life that we have to accept. Now, the 2 million patrons on Patreon, that's roughly like 200 per creator of the ones that we want to succeed. So each of the 10,000 creators gets 200 patrons each. Now, they don't have to be exclusive, but I am going to split their money up. So the average pledge on Patreon is $12. So let's say all the 2 million people contribute $12. That's $24 million divided among 10,000 people. Now, if you know the math, that doesn't add up. That's $2,400 per person per year. That's not going to work. And Patreon isn't picking up new patrons at a rate that's going to support all the new channels that are using it, right? There's a dearth of choice of channels to support, but there aren't enough patrons to bring enough money to the platform. Each person per month is only going to give $12 or so, and that doesn't support nearly enough creators to warrant using Patreon as the go-to platform. Like, for example, if a place like Facebook, which has 2 billion users, incorporated a pay function into their app, they would instantly be more successful than Patreon could ever be, because they just don't have enough people. They only have 2 million monthly users. Like, that's nothing. There's no way. Every single YouTube channel that I've watched over the last months all have a Patreon page. Now, all of them may not be expecting to make enough money to support themselves purely on Patreon, but with the ad revenue dropping the way that it is, if we just act like Patreon's the solution to everything and don't actively pursue other ways of making money, and I'm not talking about sponsors and stuff, I'm talking about projects similar to Patreon, but that don't fall into the same pitfalls that Patreon has fallen into, mainly being a large centralized platform with little to no means of discovery for new creators, and which encourages money going to the bigger creators rather than encouraging sending money to smaller ones who really actually need it, because the bigger ones already have other means of making money. They already get more views, so that means more ad revenue, paltry as it is, the CPMs and such. They get sponsorships, they get, brand deals, they get sponsored videos. Like, these are all avenues open to larger creators, which are not open to smaller ones who really need it. If you have 10,000 subscribers, you will get all these random ass messages from what people that I follow have said. You'll get all these random ass messages asking you to sponsor or talk about products that really have no place marketing to people, like barely shielded scams or something like that. So why can't we use that intent? Clearly there is some interest in getting the word out to even a relatively small audience, like a 10K sub channel, right? They do have reach enough that they attract certain advertisers. So why can't we, why do all ads served on YouTube have to be sold by YouTube? This is something that Linus Tech Tips talked about when he said some of their videos just weren't getting ads even if they were monetized because there isn't enough ad inventory to go around. And he said, why can't I employ an ad guy to get ads to put on my video? Why is that not available to me? And I get the lion's proportion of the ads, and I give the other 45 to YouTube, like YouTube does now, but reversed. So his channel would get 55% and then 45% would go to YouTube. That seems like a fairly good deal to me. And if there were some way to integrate that with the YouTube website itself, where I don't have to just bake it into the videos that I make, and I can choose what ads play before my videos and after my videos and during my videos, and I can make my videos around them, and my ads wouldn't become outdated when I stop having a deal with this company. Now, when you watch a lot of older videos from these channels, the ads that play on them last in perpetuity. They don't have a chance to go back and remove those, and they don't actively make money on those ads anymore because those deals are done. Like Linus Tech Tips has a lot of videos sponsored by TunnelBear, which is no longer even a company. It's been bought by some other company. So they're not making any money off the views that those videos are getting. Now, they have such a large back catalog of videos. The majority of their new views are not coming from their new videos. It's just not possible. Like, you're making one video and you have 1,200 in your catalog, you're going to get more views on those. It's just the way that it works. So if YouTube allowed you to integrate your ads into the platform, like, hey, I uploaded this ad, you can verify it for Content ID or whatever. That's already a thing that people do. You can check my ad, and then the company can approve the ad on my channel through their like creator account or something, and then I'm allowed to put those ads before my video. So you don't have to sell the ad for me. I did it myself. And then just reverse the flip of the ad, or not even that. You still take 55%, just give me the 45% that I normally get. Like, why isn't that an option? That seems to me like it would give creators the incentive to go out and sell ads rather than YouTube doing it themselves. And the creators could deal one-on-one with the brands that want to put ads on their videos, and they know what kind of videos they're getting. It would seem to me that those would have higher CPMs than generic ads for A&W or BMW or whatever that come before videos that people don't even know what they're getting. Now those could still be available, but offering this as a solution to premium channels who have like higher, or doesn't even matter how big your channel is, you could offer it to anyone. If you can persuade someone to advertise on your channel and not violate any terms of service, because remember, you could still report these ads or report these videos and they could still get taken down. So there's, I don't think, much room for exploitation beyond already. And YouTube can manually review all these channels anyway, because the number of channels that have monetization turned on now is relatively low compared to what it was last year. So I don't see, or set another arbitrary cutoff. Be like, you need to have 100K subs to put custom ads. Why not? You need 1K subs or whatever to get monetized in the first place. Why not you get 100K subs and now you can put whatever ads you want. You hire an ad guy, you sell the ads, you can put it on there. You don't have to bake the ads in straight into your video content, because those don't age well, right? And you could still you could go back then and change the ads on videos that you made 2 years ago to ads that you're making now, so that you get more collective CPMs on them. Seems like a good idea to me. I don't know if that's a panacea, but who knows, right? Just one idea that I had. Whatever.